1, 2, 20, Srimad Bhagavatam. Evam prasana manaso Bhagavad Bhakti Yogataha Bhagavat Tattva Vijnanam Mukta Sangasya Jayate Evam prasanna manaso Bhagavat Bhakti Yogataha Bhagavat Tattva Vijnanam Mukta Sangasya Jayate. Thus established in the mode of unalloyed goodness, the man whose mind has been enlivened by contact with devotional service to the Lord gains positive scientific knowledge of the personality of Godhead in the stage of liberation from all material association. Pretty inviting. Let's go. Purport by Srila Prabhupada. In the Bhagavad Gita 7.3, it is said that out of many thousands of ordinary men, one fortunate man endeavors for perfection in life. Mostly, men are conducted by the modes of passion and ignorance, and thus they are engaged always in lust, desire, hankering, ignorance, and sleep. Out of many such man-like animals, there is actually a man who knows the responsibility of human life and thus tries to make life perfect by following the prescribed duties. And out of many thousands of such persons who have thus attained success in human life, one may know scientifically about the personality of Godhead Sri Krishna in the same Bhagavad Gita 1855. It is also said that scientific knowledge of Sri Krishna is understood only by the process of devotional service bhakti yoga. The very same thing is confirmed here in the above words. No ordinary man, or even one who has attained success in human life, can know scientifically or perfectly the personality of Godhead. The next sentence is underlined in this book. Perfection of human life is attained when one can understand that he is not the product of matter, but is in fact spirit. And as soon as one understands that he has nothing to do with matter, he at once ceases his material hankerings and becomes enlivened as a spiritual being. This attainment of success is possible when one is above the modes of passion and ignorance, or in other words, when one is actually a Brahmana by qualification. A Brahmana is the symbol of Sattva Guna, or the mode of goodness, and others who are not in the mode of goodness are either Kshatriyas, Vaishyas, Shudras, or less than Shudras. The Brahminical stage is the highest stage of human life because of its good qualities. So one cannot be a devotee unless one at least qualifies as a Brahmana. The devotee is already a Brahmana by action. But that is not the end of it. As referred to above, such a Brahmana has to become a Vaishnava. In fact, to be actually in the transcendental stage, a pure Vaishnava is a liberated soul and is transcendental even to the position of a Brahmana. In the material stage, even a Brahmana is also a conditioned soul, because although in the Brahminical stage the conception of Brahman or transcendence is realized, scientific knowledge of the Supreme Lord is lacking. One has to surpass the Brahminical stage and reach the Vasudeva stage to understand the personality of Godhead Krishna. The science of the personality of Godhead is a subject matter for study by the postgraduate students in the spiritual line. Foolish men or men with a poor fund of knowledge do not understand the Supreme Lord, and they interpret Krishna according to their respective whims. The fact is, however, that one cannot understand the science of the personality of Godhead unless one is freed from the contamination of the material modes, even up to the stage of a Brahmana. When a qualified Brahmana factually becomes a Vaishnava, in the enlivened state of liberation, he can know what is actually the personality of Godhead. So here's the chicken or the egg question. Which comes first? The chicken or the egg? Which comes first? Becoming a Brahmana or becoming a Vaishnava? The persuasion in this purport seems to be becoming a Brahmana, because without becoming a Brahmana, you can't become a Vaishnava. So if we're not yet Brahmana, are we Vaishnavas? It's a good question, isn't it? And who could say, I've got brahminical qualities? We can say we have some other qualities, and we have some brahminical qualities, and we can also have some other qualities. So therefore, we're not in the Sattva yet. So we're not Vaishnavas yet, by that logic. In the Bhagavatam that we read yesterday evening, and again now this morning, the stage of perfection is the topic that's being discussed. So being a Vaishnava means the mature stage of Vaishnava. The mature stage of Vaishnava surpasses that of a Brahmana. Say it again. The mature stage of Vaishnava surpasses that of a Brahmana, supposing one is not yet at the mature stage of Vaishnava. That's most of us. We're on the path. We're striving to become. Saying, who can raise their hand and say, I have all Vaishnava qualities. So there's the sadhya and there's the sadhana. The goal and the means to reach the goal. So the means to reach the goal, that's been discussed by these verses. It's the bhakti process. Bhakti process is the process to reach the goal. Let's do this one, another Bhagavatam verse. Yasyasti bhaktir bhagavatya kinchana sarvayudinas tatra samasate sara harava bhaktasya kvato mahadguna. You know the verse. The verse says, the abhaktas, harav abhaktasya, those who are not bhaktas of Hari, harav abhaktasya, kuto mahadguna, they don't have mahadguna, they don't have good qualities. And the converse is, yasyasti bhaktir, bhagavat, akinchana, bhagavat in relation to Bhagavan, bhagavat akinchana, where akinchana is a good word, where there isn't some material attachment or sense of material possessiveness. To such persons, all good qualities come. So that sounds like become a bhakta of Hari and all good qualities come. That's what that one sounds like. And this one sounds like you're not going to have the qualities of Vaishnava until you first become a Brahmana. Does that sound like a contradiction? Chicken and the egg. So then it goes back to earlier verses. What's the seed of bhakti? looking, so we just used this example yesterday. There's a Tulsi plant over there on the other side of the room. And where did the Tulsi plant come from? Came from a seed. And where did the seed come? From a Tulsi plant. Become many leaves, and they start to produce mungeries. That's a Tulsi. Or next, the mungeries produce seeds, or all of the above. Which is the Tulsi?
All of the above.
There are different stages. So that here is speaking, this is at least how I understand what Prabhupada is communicating. The mature stage is where the Brahmana quality has already been reached and surpassed. And thus it's a stage of perfection, where it's not just the seed, because the seed was several verses before. The seed was hearing topics about Vasudeva Katavaruchi. Punya Tirtana Shevana. Punya. One becomes pious, one becomes bestowed with good qualities by the process of hearing. And that's bhakti. So one who's engaged in hearing, we're engaged in hearing and chanting. So we're bhaktas, because that's what bhaktas do by definition. We're engaged in bhakti. So it's the process. It's the seed, or the couple of leaves come out of the seed when you're sprouting the seed. So there's stages that there's not a contradiction. It depends on the lens through which you're looking. And if the topic, if the focus is the stage of perfection, then one can say the stage of Brahmana has already been surpassed. The qualities of Brahmana have been attained, but how does one attain them? This is Kali Yuga. Kalir doshinate rajan yasti eka mahan gunam kirtana deva krishnasya. The stage of Kali is an ocean of faults. Dosha niti. Not prema niti, dosha niti. Ocean of faults. So from that ocean of faults, how can one have good qualities? One doesn't have good qualities, one has bad qualities. And then, so it may be relatively better and relatively worse, but not enough. So the process of bhakti has a beginning, it has a seed, and it has a nourishing of that. So where does the seed come from? And then comes another question, is bhakti inherent or inherited? It is both, not or. Bhakti is within, but it's dormant, like the seed. And the seed becomes awakened by contact with water and sunlight. Not too much water, not too much anything, just a little. So the cultivation of the seed of bhakti, that's Krishna Prema Saja Kabunoi, it's already within, comes by contact with one who's carrying bhakti. Bhakti awakens bhakti. So they're not contradictory, it's just describing a process and stages in that process, which is, one can say, the 9 stages of bhakti, which Rupa Goswami presented in Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, and is further elaborated upon in Hari Bhakti Vilas, and is further elaborated upon in Madhurya Kandamati by Vishwanath Chakrabarti Thakur. The stages of bhakti are outlined here. Their outlines, they're drawing from the scripture. The scripture gives it in a nutshell, and then it's expanded. So there's stages, no problem. This is describing the stage of perfection, and to attain that stage of perfection, the Brahmanical status must be there. The seed doesn't have to have the mature stage, but the mature stage has to have the seed within it, or having surpassed it. So bhakti gives rise to bhakti, And the seed gives rise to, when the process of cultivation of the seed is properly performed, it gives rise to the mature stage. And that's what this is describing. That's the second paragraph. I'll read the underlined section again. Perfection of human life is attained when one can understand that he is not the product of matter, but is in fact spirit. And as soon as one understands that he has nothing to do with matter, he at once ceases material hankerings and becomes enlivened as a spiritual being. So this is same as the 551 that we heard the other evening. Brahmasuk, Brahmasokyam Tvanantam. Spiritual happiness, Sukha, happiness. Brahmasuk, spiritual happiness that's unending. Brahmasokyam Tvanantam. That's the spiritual position. That spiritual position is attained by bhakti. However, we've heard, one may be try for that spiritual Brahmasuk as an impersonalist. So they're not discounted, they're just not fully matured yet. But they're aspiring for, that means leaving behind, the material affinity. So that Rajas and Tamas, that's prominently material affinity. That's awarded to someone who wants material enjoyment. Covered by Rajas, covered by Tamas, or combination. And then Mudha Buddhas doesn't mean Shuddha Sattva. Here it's specifically Shuddha Sattva. The phrase is used. We're the Vasudeva stage, Shuddha Sattva. There it is. Free from all contamination. That's the Shuddha Sattva stage. That's the liberation stage. And there's the approaching liberation stage. So the aspiration for Brahmasuk or Shuddha Sattva is best achieved by bhakti. And then comparing the Brahmasuk of the impersonalist and the Brahmasuk of the Bhakta, the Bhakta's Brahmasuk is complete because it's only through bhakti, that's the verse that's quoted in the purport, by bhakti one can understand the Supreme Person. And by understanding the Supreme Person, by bhakti, the coverings are reduced, eventually the coverings are eliminated, and the real happiness that we're seeking is awakened. That's a nice promise. How come we're not experiencing it? Got a lot of covering and not a lot of submission. Some covering, there should be some submission, and a lot of covering. So we have work to do. So it's not mechanical, it's devotional process. And there are degrees of progress in that submission activity, Pali in chanting, giving up offenses, and engaging instead in faithful hearing. That's where our work goes. And to the degree we do our work or follow properly the process, it is effective. Now, there's impacted or built within the verse is the statement that when that bhakti is awakened, then positive knowledge or scientific knowledge about the object of bhakti becomes enlivened. He gains positive scientific knowledge of the personality of Godhead. In the stage of liberation from all material association. So it's gradual, like the rising of the sun. this morning I was thinking of being with Dina Bandhu at Rindakunt. Because I'm looking out the window and looking at, there's this really bright star that moves in a trajectory like this. But it goes like this. And if you over the season, it would start over here on the horizon, and then over here, and then over here. So he pointed, Dina Bandhu pointed where this was early in the morning. Over there is Nandagaon, and over there is the sun. So in the winter, the sun rises that direction in the north part. And as the season moves, it goes over in that direction towards Nandagaon. And as the season goes, then it starts rising, going back. So the rising and setting, just a detail, rising of the setting of the sun doesn't change. It's always on the eastern horizon, but sometimes more the northern, sometimes more the southern side. It's just Vedic cosmology, which is another topic. But the sun always rises gradually. That's the point. And we can count on it. We can count on the sun rising. Then, the annihilation of the universe, it won't rise because the universe is annihilated, and so is the sun. But as long as there's universe, the sun rises slowly, and bhakti rises slowly. So little by little by little by little. And this is describing the perfectional stage. And in that perfectional stage, something arises. Scientific knowledge. Now, Prabhupada used the word scientific knowledge by contrasting faith or belief to fact. And the way that you can get facts is presumably by science, but it says spiritual science is fact, and material science keeps changing. It's not fact. In spiritual science, it's a process, and it's predictable, the outcome. That's science. Experimentation, hypothesis, experimentation, observation, conclusion. Prabhupada went to college and he knew that process, so he described, you can't make an experiment to verify, but you can have the experience. It's not by direct perception, it's by realization, the realization of scientific knowledge arising when one's heart becomes free from material contamination. And there's a process to become free from material contamination. Supposing that's not my experience, then you won't experience the personality of Godhead. Because you don't experience something doesn't mean it doesn't exist. When the sun sets, I don't experience the sun. It doesn't not exist. It doesn't cease to exist because I don't see it, etc., etc. So seeing is not believing. Seeing is imperfect with imperfect senses. And what's experienced by awakening of transcendental knowledge, and the transcendental knowledge is within, and it becomes confirmed without by Guru Sadhu Shastra. But the alignment of the experience should be in the light of Guru Sadhu Shastra. And otherwise, left to the side. I'm pausing because a question came up in Portland, I think it was. Yeah, in Portland. About how do we understand statements that are realizations by our acharyas that differ from another acharya? Are we to accept those realizations, or are we to take them as poetic and not factual? Of course, it depends. But so in that discussion, What's scientific knowledge of the personality of Godhead anyways? And so there needs to be alignment with Scripture. But there may be some things that our acharyas have, there are many things that our acharyas have written that's not found in the pages of Srimad Bhagavatam or other Puranas. At least not ones that we're familiar with. So what about those? I mean, the specific topic was one many of us have heard. When Mother Jasoda was feeding Krishna because he wanted her to stop churning the butter, she looked out of the corner of her eye and she saw the milk boiling on the stove, and she ran to rescue the milk that was boiling on the stove. So there's this statement, that's the Bhagavatam, and other Puranas, many other Puranas have the same meaning. But there's this realization that many of us have heard, that the milk was boiling over because the milk was ready to commit suicide. So that's not in the Bhagavatam. Where does it come from? We all know it. And there's other nice examples. We all know it. Where does it come from? So it comes from the realization of a poet, a Vaishnava, pure devotee poet. And there's a name for that poet, because when Hari Parshad Prabhu translated Hari Suri's commentary on the 10th canto, and in 2 verses he describes the milk contemplating suicide. I'm going to jump into the fire with the use of my life. Because Krishna will be so satisfied by the breast milk of Mother Jasoda, I'll have no service with the use of my life. Better jump into the fire. It's a realization. So the question is, or was, are we to accept that as fact or not? And there's so many other examples. Rupa Goswami's experience of pastime between Radha and Krishna that are not within the Bhagavatam, not within any scripture. Are we to accept them as fact? Then everything depends upon the caliber of that person. Is he on this platform where positive scientific knowledge of the personality of Godhead arises? Yadrashi, Yadrashi, Shraddha, Siddhi, Bhavati, Tadrashi. There's a phrase from Brahma Samhita like that. And there's there's a similar source repeated many times by our acharyas, that Sanskrit is very similar. And it says essentially that according to Shraddha, Siddhi, Yadrashi, Yadrashi, Shraddha, according to the faith, according to the focus, because faith guides our focus. Supposing people don't have strong faith, they're unfocused. Supposing they have strong faith, then it becomes much easier to remain focused. So faith is very important. Consciousness guided by faith, and faith in what? Not faith in Scripture. Reality of the existence of the personality of Godhead. So that comes by hearing and chanting. The coverings are removed. That's previous verses in this chapter. Coverings are removed, and then something else is left. What's left? Who we are is left. And when that's a statement in this little section. When we come to understand who we are, not the body, but part of the Supreme, then that's fit receptivity for scientific knowledge to arise. That must be in alignment with Guru Sadhu Shastra, but maybe a very specific realization that you can't confirm from Guru, from Shastra, but it's a realization of a person who is being described in this verse in purport. Do we accept? We accept the words of Krishna because he's the perfect person, and we accept the words of the perfect person, who is representative of the perfect person, Krishna, as perfect. We have to fret and worry about it. Wait a minute, how does this happen, and where is it corroborated? And so the authority ultimately is Shastra. And then through pure devotion, scientific knowledge of Krishna, the absolute truth, awakens. And there's diversity. After all, what's Vedanta Sutra? That's Vyasa's realization of the Vedas. It was Srimad Bhagavatam. According to the Bhagavatam, it's Vyasa's realization of Vedanta Sutra, based on his meditation in trance. Canto 1, Chapter 7, instructed by Narada. And it's his realizations. And here it is, in that Shastra, Bhagavad Purana. Amala Pramana, the best evidence. But it's his realization. We accept. It's Shastra. And so there's only one person that can have that qualification, or others could have that qualification. Others can have that qualification. It's exceptional. But those that have that exceptional qualification, scientific knowledge arises. So then we have to examine or consider the source. And then we can accept without worries. So the source from whom we hear is very important. Last sentence. When a qualified Brahmana factually becomes a Vaishnava, in the enlivened state of liberation, he can know what is actually the personality of Godhead. Bhagavatam is very nice. Any discussion?
Hare Krishna, pardon me if my question is not very well formed. So one thought that was coming to my mind was the positive scientific knowledge. So is this the Sambandha, Abhideya, and Prayojana that is being talked about?
Yes.
Okay.
It's the prayojana, but it's all three in one sense. Sambandha is the relationship. Anyway, it's all three. Or any portion of those three.
And then one slight confusion is kind of the same chicken and egg thing kind of thing. So my aim in a way is I'm inspired by the Brahmana wives in the 10th canto, where they are bhaktas of Krishna. So that inspires me, and in a way, almost seems like after bhakti is established, then you get
positive scientific knowledge.
So I guess my question is, I want to still focus on the bhakti part. Does that make sense?
Always.
Okay.
Don't stray.
Thank you.
Maharaj, so the Brahmana word that is being talked about here, so it's obviously by guna and karma, right? Not by birth.
I'm listening.
Yeah. The reason I'm asking is I heard this pastime where when Srila Prabhupada's disciples went to Vrindavan, some of the Vrajavasis were, blessing the Western Vaishnavas that maybe you be a Brahmana. So they were thinking by birth. Is that what they were blessing?
What's your question? Is that a blessing?
I'm saying so when they are blessing.
Okay, so what was your question?
So my question is, so because if it is by guna and karma, then if we practice, as Prabhu is saying, if you practice the Vaishnava way of life, it seems that the Brahminical, qualifications are included in that. So one doesn't have to aspire to take birth as a Brahmana in one's next life and then practice Vaishnavism and all that.
But you're repeating yourself in the premise is in the question. So I'm confused. Is there substance to the Vaishnava sadhus in Vrindavan giving blessings to the Western Vaishnavas? Is there substance to that? Is that what you're asking?
No. So when they are blessing the Western Vaishnavas, that may you be a Brahmana in your next life. So they are thinking by birth and thinking.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
But our understanding here, even
From scripture.
From scripture, is guna and karma. It's not
Yes.
birth. Yeah.
It's ABC.
Yeah.
But some persons have a different idea than scripture.
Hare Krishna, Guru Maharaj. You said Vyasadeva, he, through his realization, when he wrote Bhagavatam, it became a scripture. But Rupa Goswami or Hari Suri, Sri Hari Suri and Srila Rupa Goswami, when they write their realization, it's a script. It is equivalent to a scripture for us Gaudiya Vaishnavas.
It has weight like that. It's not exactly the same. Go ahead.
Yeah, that's the question. Why did Vyasadev's realization become scripture but not theirs?
Well, we can say specifically with Rupa Goswami, he was instructed, just as Vyas was instructed by Narada. Scripture. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu instructed Rupa Goswami, here's truths, principles, not all the details, but many, 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 many details. Now write scripture. And I invest you in the power to write and to understand. Scripture, as good as. It's commentary, one can say, it's commentary, and one can also say it's scripture, just like Bhagavatam is commentary on Vedanta Sutra. So it carries the same weight or comparable weight. You want to get into a pan scale thing, which has greater weight. We give special weight to Vyas, and because of his position, he's an incarnation of the personality of Godhead, specifically assigned to that service of compiling and explaining. So was Rupa Goswami similarly empowered? Yes. But we give special weight to Vyas in his writing, but it's comparable. Is that right? And to my knowledge, Hari Suri had a guru, but it's not quite the same as Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, Krishna himself empowering Rupa Goswami. So, gradations of weight. Behind you.
Hare Krishna. I just had a question. How does family tree relate to soul's journey back to Godhead? It's
how does what relate?
Family tree,
the family tree?
Yeah, type of
in which family you're born? How does it relate?
How do souls travel through the family, or it seems like they come you can with the next birth you can become somebody else because of your karma, but
yes.
But it also seems like that people who are there's certain tradition, children are more usually advanced in the same tradition, and it's is this it's a bit kind of confusing to me, to Um,
How important is it? What's the role?
yeah, it's kind of like what's the role of it? It's
It has weight, but it can become weightless.
okay.
Meaning, let's take the example of Bharat Maharaj. Next life, he became a deer. In the next life, he became the son of a Brahmana. Quick jump from a deer to a Brahmana. Because, the deer for XYZ reasons, but his deeper quality was pure devotee. So he took birth as a Brahmana. Or, you can think of Prahlad Maharaj. In which family was he born? Not an elevated family. And then there are different days at Brahma, so there's different experiences of who Prahlad was in his previous life, which is related to your question. But in either case, whoever he was in his previous life, he took birth in a demoniac family. So his qualification was hearing from Narada, not the family in which he was born. And one could say his previous activity. In different days of Brahma, there's different who was Prahlad in his previous life. So there's some correlation, but it's not a one-to-one. It can completely dissolve. Here's another, Valmiki. Who was Valmiki before he was Valmiki? But he became a pure devotee by association with Narada. Correct? Narada himself. So he was, the son of a Shudra. And he became Narada in his next life. So it's not, there's some correlation, there's continuation from one life to the next life, but it's not, and largely where the mind is where the soul goes after this life. But and then there's the rule, and there's exceptions to the rule, or factors to weigh. It's not always by birth. And even by birth, when it can completely change by sadhu sangha. There's rules and there's transformation that comes by sadhu sangha. And exceptional circumstances too. I mean, going from a deer to a Brahmana, that's like quantum leap. But it's because of Supersoul, even when he's in the body of the deer, he remembered his previous life. Now, most of us don't remember our previous life. What to speak of being in the body of a deer and remembering his life as a king. So Supersoul factors prevails in some circumstances. But generally, the Supersoul principle is according to guna and karma. And that determines the family in which we take birth, etc. It's all in Krishna's hand. There's rules and there's exceptions. Does that unconfuse you or makes it more confusing?
Kind of stabilizes confusion.
Ultimately, Supersoul, the Supreme Lord, is in charge of everything. And there's patterns that he establishes that's the rule. Mm-hmm. And then there's exceptions to rules that he establishes. If he so desires, for whatever reason, he doesn't need our, approval. Mm-hmm. Or our, okay, now I understand why he did what he did. It's not subject to our understanding why he did what he did. He can make exceptions to his rules. And he does sometimes, for whatever the reasons. Mm-hmm.
So that believe that like look that family kind of like is like attachment. I know like especially in the beginning of the movement there was like the children are like attachment and treated and separated like it was all kind of story. So but like also like some families have like very negative relationships, and I feel like if you treat them like attachment, like you kind of let them go, it makes it easier to follow this path.
Yeah.
But at the same time it's like a kind of like, I know, it's like it is your tree, you know, like it's your roots, and it's kind of it makes it kind of hard. I mean, like I'm trying to find ways to, I guess, to leave that attachment, to get separated. It's just I don't know. It's
Gradual. It's just like the rising of the sun or the growing of a tulsi from a tulsi seed. It's gradual. So the principle is affinity for transcendence, or affinity for Krishna, or affinity for knowing who I really am, because the family roots is not who you really are. And there may be attachments, okay, that's the material condition. Now, who are you? And if you really want to know who you are, Scripture will help you, and Krishna will help you, and doesn't require something rough or abrupt or abrasive or just trashing, because that's artificial. It'll come back. So grow in the affinity of knowing who you are, and then just like it was in this purport, and then knowledge, scientific knowledge, can be yours. Who your real family is. It has connected to who you really are. But as long as bodily identification is there, the pull will remain. Sometimes greater, sometimes lesser. And the maturing stage is not just trash it. Maturing stage is the gradual rising of the sun. And then there's still respect without attachment. The respect on the spiritual platform, and the gratitude for so much service has been rendered by family members, etc., 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 etc. But that's it's gradual. So allow for that. Don't worry.
thank you.
You can Hare Krishna, but you can't hurry Krishna. Okay. She has.
Maharaj, two questions I had. First was in context of offenses.
Of?
Offenses.
Offenses.
Because like you mentioned that, and also in purport, like we have to go beyond these modes, and offenses are also a big obstacle. So like offenses, you mentioned that whenever we consider something spiritual to be material, that's where we usually commit the offenses. But I was also contemplating on, like, we understand that we don't want to take it as a material, and we are aware of that fact. But still mistakes happen because of our own limitations. So essentially we are not thinking in that way, but mistakes do happen. And because of lack of capacity, we let the mistake happen and we just let it go many times. So I was realizing that we usually speak in context of ninda, means offense about, blaspheming the devotees and all. But also like in seva, and like so many offenses are being committed time to time. So it feels like sometimes that, wow, there is no way out.
No, that's not true. Madhurya Kandamani holds scriptural evidence to help you in this quagmire. Seva aparad is very quickly, instantly dismissed by the holy name. But supposing I or you, any one of us, are not chanting the pure holy name. Even in that Abbas chanting, it has the power to instantly dissolve all seva aparad, the reactions. So it doesn't mean, okay, great, I can do seva aparad and I just chant. So that's sitting on the strength of chanting, but that's nam aparad. So you strive for shuddhanam by avoiding offenses. Now, supposing I'm not there yet, or you're not there yet, so then what? Continue chanting with faith that let me desist from such and such tendency, mistake tendency, and strive for the other, and keep good association to give me the strength to go beyond my own strength in good association. So you just follow the bhakti process properly. Not mechanically, but properly, devotionally. And such mistake-making tendencies will subside. And supposing there's a very elevated devotee, not you, but supposing there's a very elevated devotee and they make a mistake. So we know from Bhagavad Gita, Krishna considers that person a sadhu, and Krishna corrects the situation. Shipram bhavati dharmatma. So you're not there yet. You're not such a person. But the principle is Krishna is kind, and Krishna will do the course correction to stay fixed on the destination and striving by right means. One is assured of success. So you say back to you, looks like there's no way out. That's darkness of ignorance. Don't submit to that. Go to the light. Tamasi ma jyotir kama.
So my second question was with regard to the realizations. Like in devotional service also, many times heart wants to feel good, not essentially enjoyment, but wants to feel good in relationship with Krishna, to keep that relationship alive. So we get some realization, even among devotees, we talk about Krishna's mercy so much. So just a thought came to my mind, and it felt so good that Narasimhadev told, Prahlad Maharaja's 7 generations forward and backward,
Yes.
all were liberated. So just a thought came that since Narasimhadev Bhagwan loves Prahlad Maharaj, so he loves all those who are related to Prahlad Maharaj. That's what love is. So that's why probably.
This connects to the previous question, the family tree question. Go ahead.
So there was again a fear that it could be a speculation. It is not mentioned in the Shastras, but then it is.
What's not mentioned? Were you
Like-
saying it? What's it?
That since Narasimhadev loves Prahlad Maharaj, that's why he loves all those who are connected with Prahlad Maharaj. And he gave this liberation to all of them. So that's just a logical connection that my brain was trying to make. But then I felt good about it. But then again, I went into this fear that, it could be just a speculation. That's not how I should think that what Narasimhadev Bhagavan thought. So I don't like this fear, basically.
Well, don't speculate.
Very unsettling.
You ask. Here, Prabhupada was asked by Brahmananda, many years ago, when it says 7 generations, what's that liberation? Prabhupada said, they'll get the opportunity to engage in devotional service. Clear? Yeah. So then if you don't know, you ask. You get this idea. You go to Guru Sadhu Shastra and say, is this idea in line with Guru Sadhu Shastra or not? You don't have to have fear.
So my main point was not what kind of liberation, but why he gave.
I understand the question. I understand your question. And then you take your question and you go to Guru Sadhu Shastra. Don't be in fear. Don't be paralyzed.
We get many such thoughts. So how many
Okay,
times?
you go, Gurus become an experienced devotee by Sadhu Sangha. Don't whine and complain. Be in fear. Don't stay there. You have a bhakti process. Follow the process. And you may not get an answer immediately. That's okay. Put the thought in the parking lot. And when you get the answer, you got the answer. Until then, it's in the parking lot. It's not in the, oh, I'm fearful because I came up with this speculation. You just follow the process. And then, like the purport said, and it's underlined in your book, when that stage comes, then scientific knowledge awakens of the personality of Godhead. So what was he thinking? You know, just Rupa Goswami had the capacity to know what Krishna was thinking, in being so empowered. So we go to Rupa Goswami. What does he write in Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu? What does he write? What does Jiva Goswami write in the Sandarbhas? So go study them. Put your question in a parking lot and go study Guru Sadhu Shastra. You can have a really big parking lot. That's okay. But follow the process. Okay, we're going to end there. Srila Prabhupada ki.
Thank you.
Jai.
Jai.